Hey, old dude this morning. Beautiful Monday morning here in Houston. It's kind of cool in the garage right now. Got the bottom part of the table all sanded down, smooth, sealed up, and I've got these channels put in it to help hold it from cupping. So now the big deal is I need to flip the table over. I have to get some help to do that because that table it's not light. I can't do it by myself, so get some help, flip it over, and do the same thing to the top, and we'll be pretty well done with this project. So, the bottom is kind of a test piece. I was seeing how this oil works and seeing how it worked with this, just to get an idea of what it's going to look like. We're probably going to go down. This was at 220. You can see, and I didn't worry too much about getting it perfectly flat on the bottom, but you can see what it looks like here, where I didn't get sanded down right here. This sanded off, it leaves it kind of a matte finish. I think it'll go up to like 420 or so on the top. That should make it be a little bit shinier. I may actually put the oil on it and then buff it so that it has a shine to it. It's gonna be on what my daughter decides she wants, if she wants that shininess or if she wants that flatness. But overall, I think it came out looking pretty good. You can kind of see this end, it still has some pinholes there I left in there. Obviously on the top we'll fill all that stuff. I don't care about the bottom, but you can see the difference here where I sanded this with 220 and here where it couldn't get sanded down in that big crack. So I don't know if she'll want this finish or she'll want this finish. But anyway, that's the bottom. I'm still holding it in clamps just because when I bolted these down, I wanted it to be as flat as possible. And when we release it, they should hold that. Well, obviously, hopefully it'll hold it in tension. We'll see. Because it still has a tendency to want to cup this way. Just about maybe an eighth of an inch or a quarter inch. I hope that takes it out. These are where the legs are going to go. And then I think we pretty much got this long axis bow out of it. So we'll see how that works. Okay, enough of that racket, but I just wanted y'all to understand why I wear hearing protection when I'm routing. These machines are loud and they make a lot of chips and a lot of dust, so you need a respirator too. The good news is we got the table flipped over and I'm starting to flatten the top. Now you can see here we've moved on down the table, and so now you can see all the chips and the dust that this thing's spitting out the backside. But once I got in a rhythm, this went fairly quickly. Now, for those of you asking, I did check around to see if there's a place that could run this table through a big slab surfacer. And down here around Houston where I'm at, there's not too many of those places available. There's a couple of them I did get a hold of, and they were extremely expensive to run something this size through it. So I just decided this was the simplest and easiest way to do it without having to transport it or pay a fortune to get it done. So here I wanted to give you better idea of what it looks like when I'm surfacing the table off. It takes a couple of passes to get down this eighth of an inch out on the edges. It's a little shallower in the middle, but this router does a terrific job of surfacing out this table. So now I've continued to move the router down the table, and you'll notice that I've kept the table clamped at all times on the edges to keep it, I want it flat across my fixture, the table I have that is true, that is flat and level end to end and side to side. I'm trying to keep this workpiece as flat and straight as I can. So that pretty much takes care of getting it smoothed off on the top with a router. And so now it's time to start sanding. Just a note to anybody looking at doing this, routing out wood makes a mess. It throws dirt all over my wife's car, so I got to get that cleaned up before she sees that. That's not going to be a good thing. Yeah, it's going to take me a couple of months to get my garage all cleaned back out. Now, one of the things you may notice while I'm sanding here is there's a big crack right there in the middle of that epoxy we poured. And that crack showed up because the table bowed, and it's kind of hard to imagine, but it bowed down away from us about 2 inches on each end. So this is the relief that it hit. And this crack is really deep. As you look at it, there's a lot of stuff down in there I got to get out. but it ends up being about 3/4 of an inch down into that epoxy. So here you can see I'm just cleaning out all of the little, you see these little pinholes are really small, those little black dots. Some of them are filled with epoxy, some of them are new, because what those are, there's where bugs had chewed and ate through the tree, and they left just this little tube. And some of them are at the top, and some of them we sanded down to in the process of routing and sanding, so they're kind of new. And I have to clean out the sawdust that's down in them so that I can get some epoxy in there to seal them off. And once I've got them all cleaned out, you notice I marked them with a pencil while I was doing that. And here I'm just vacuuming out the pieces and hopefully getting even some more out of the holes in the pits that are there than what I could clean out with my little stick. And then I had to build a dam. I thought it was best to go around here and build a little dam around this deep crack because I'm going to overfill that with epoxy to give it a chance to settle. So now I've mixed up the epoxy and made it the best I could. The black is kind of hard to do when you're mixing up this small of a batch to get it mixed up perfectly. But you can see I filled the crack there. I work out some of the bubbles. They'll keep coming up. And then now I'm just going around and using that, basically a pin, a long straight pin, and just letting the epoxy drip into these little holes. And then I'm going to have to come back. This is the hardest part about doing this. I have to come back and sand this hard epoxy once it cures. It's very hard. The table's a little softer around it, especially the lighter wood that you see is really soft. The brown wood that you see, or the knots, are hard as glass. So it's very difficult to sand this epoxy without sanding a low spot into the wood. So after a couple of days, I come back and I'm digging out the hot glue out of this epoxy, because if you've ever tried to sand hot glue, it sands just about like rubber, and it will never really come off there. You just eventually, vibrate it back and forth enough that it breaks off. What should have been a couple of days turned into about a week and a half because I blew out my knee. But after that, me and my son-in-law, we worked for a couple of days sanding 220 grit to get everything kind of down to a level base, and then moving up to a 400, and then eventually to a 600, which was the last grit we did. You can see over on the left side of the screen, we would use a pencil and mark up the table in between each grit so that we knew once we got all the pencil marks were gone, we had sanded that part of the table down completely and we could move to the next grit. So I'll be the first to admit that I know just enough about things to be dangerous. I can do wood projects, never done a lot of furniture. I have a couple of friends that are really good at it though, so I called them and asked them, what was the best products to use. And one of them told me about this Odie's oil, so I got a bottle of it off of Amazon. And this is just the first coat that we put on. You basically put it on, let it set overnight, and then buff it all back off and start all over. And here in the video, I hope you can kind of see how it brings out all the colors in the wood and enhances the details. Now I know it looks like there's a lot of oil on this table, but it's almost got a consistency of honey, and when you wipe it on there, you put a little bit and it goes a long way. So this is the third coat that we put on. We let it set overnight and then buff it out, and you can kind of see how it's starting to create that depth of color. And in between all of this, we would go jump in the pool because it's about 100 degrees here in Houston with about 98% humidity. And I'm going to say here, I was not in favor of the oiled wood. I wanted her to put like a polyethylene, a clear coat over all of this just to give it a hardness and a sturdiness, but I really am impressed with the way this Odie's oil made the color variegations come out in this wood, and it looks good. So I think she made the right choice. This is the application of the fourth coat, and you can see that Reed's working it in with an orbital sander, vibrating sander, with a 0 grit Scotch-Brite pad that actually came with the Odie's oil. And it only takes a little bit of that Odie's oil, and you just work it in with that sander, and it works into the wood, and just it looks like what you see. So it's a pretty simple process. Now what you notice is we're not really putting a lot on the epoxy. It doesn't soak into the epoxy. It just makes it look uniform while you're putting it on. I had a lot of concerns with this corner of the table and this leopard looking wood that you see here with the black spots and the white. It's very soft, granular wood. It's soaked in the epoxy, and that's what made the leopard spots on it. like you see, but it took that oil well, and it seems to have stabilized the finish. So I think we're okay there. Doing this is the third coat, maybe the fourth coat we put on this. We're getting it off. This requires a little bit of effort.
A little elbow grease.
Yeah, it's almost like honey.
Yeah.
Trying to wipe honey off something.
Yeah, yeah.
Hold on, dear. We finally got the table finished on the top and got all that done, and now we flipped it over. And what we did is we test fit the legs one final time, made sure everything worked, got everything bolted up nice and solid, so none of the table's going to be fine that way. You can kind of see the final finish on the bottom. This is done, and that's only a couple of coats of that oil, so it's not quite as deep, I guess, and it's only sanded at 220. So you can kind of see the difference in what it looks like. Only sanded to 220. Doesn't quite have the shine and the depth that it does on the top, I hope. You can pick that up. But, I mean, there it is. Now we're just going to let it set. It's upside down right now, sitting on these, my wife's comforters, I don't know, blankets. But we're going to let it set for about 3 days and cure that stuff out. And then we'll be taking it over to their house and setting it up. So we're almost done. We're on the home stretch now. Well, that's it for this video. I do want to thank you for watching. Hey, like and subscribe if you like the content. Let me know if there's something I should have done different on this table, because I'm interested to learn. I think it turned out very well. When we get it put in their house, we'll get it moved in. I'll do a little short video that shows it in place in a finished environment, so you can kind of see that. But I thought it turned out real good. Thanks again for watching. Everybody have a blessed day.